Hi and welcome back to the channel, and today the used car conveyor belt has brought us a little Citroen Berlingo van. This particular vehicle is 12 years old and has covered 107,000 miles. This van's more in the bargain basement section. It's only going to be under £2,000, so it's not got any great value, but these vehicles, due to world development and more home deliveries at the moment, are in great demand. So my task today is to improve the appearance of this vehicle in one day only and with a budget of £150. That's also going to include paint materials. One of the fantastic things about this vehicle is, in credit to the previous owner, the interior of it is actually in good condition. Sure, the seats have got a few stains that we're going to need to take care of, but overall some of the commercials I see on a weekly basis are absolutely destroyed inside, and this one at 12 years old has been pretty well looked after. The back of the van's fully ply lined and also in extremely good order. It just needs a quick vacuum, and as we can see on screen, the motor trader has carefully placed in the back of the van some wheel trims for me to fit. So it's time to tackle the dirty engine bay. It's not the worst we've seen, but it definitely needs a bit of a scrub. So I've covered it thoroughly with all-purpose cleaner, and now I'm going to agitate it with a little soft brush. Once I've done that, I'm going to use the jet wash on quite a low power just to rinse off all the dirt and the all-purpose cleaner. The green microfiber on the right hand side of the screen is just covering up the ECU of the vehicle, which is the brain. I don't want to get that too wet. They are weather sealed, but it's just a little help and a little bit of precaution to put some covering over it before you wash the engine bay. So I'm using the same little brush just to go around things like the plastic trims, badges, and also there's a gap between the rear windows and the actual bodywork that sort of collects quite a lot of gunge behind there as well. So a combination of the brush and the jet wash is just going to help flush all that out. Once all that's done, I'm going to give the vehicle a good wash. I'm using a woolen wash mitt, and I'm not going to be using the 2-bucket method purely for the reason that this vehicle is of low value, and secondly it's going to get a heavy paint correction, so it's just really not worth it. So I'm going to start off using the vacuum cleaner and a soft interior brush just to go around and agitate and knock off any of the very loose dust and hoover that up first. Then I'm going to use this spray foam cleaner. This particular Citroen's got a grey console centre section, and some all-purpose cleaners can mark those and damage them, and this one's in really good order, so I just wanted to be a little bit careful and use some of that, and was a little bit more cautious when applying all-purpose cleaner around that area as well. I've covered this before in the past. Some of the Fords from around about 2008 had the same problem, so you have to be a little bit careful around certain trims in them as well. We'll also give the headlining a good scrub as well. I don't tend to get them too wet. How I usually do this is have a damp microfiber, spray the all-purpose cleaner onto that, and then use that to rub over the headlining as not to, if you get them too wet you can risk them sagging. We don't want to do that. So we're on to cleaning the seats. So I'm using a Chemical Guys drill brush attachment. It's very soft. I've pre-sprayed the seats with quite a strong mix of Built Hamber Surfix HD all-purpose cleaner, and then what I'm doing is the actual wet vac machine, it's a Karcher Poozy 110, has just got clean fresh warm water. So it's in theory sucking out all the all-purpose cleaner and dirt, and then a bit like a washing machine, you're injecting the nice clean water and rinsing it out at the same time. Some time ago this vehicle had one of its rear windows smashed, and somebody's obviously put a big plastic bag over there and duct taped it on. And it was probably on there for some time because there's some residue of the duct tape still on there and a lot of glue, and when they've pulled it off they've also pulled some of the paint with it, which I'm pointing to now. The reason why the paint's come off quite easily is the fact that these rear doors have been painted at some point and they've probably not been done too well. We can see here they're starting to lift a little bit around the window and it's bubbled up as well. So that duct tape is absolutely welded to the bodywork after being on there for so many years. So we're going to use this device today, which is called a toffee wheel. Trust me, if you're in the motor trade and you've never seen one of these before and you have a used car dealership, you definitely need one. Because we've all taken off that stuck on number plate with the little sticky fluffy pads and been left with that horrible residue and fluff that you try and pick off for hours. One of these will remove that in record time. That's exactly what they're designed for and very, very good at it. They're also very good for removing some specific sign writing that chips very easily if you try and pick it off, which is the same characteristics of this duct tape that's been on here for an extremely long time. It's very similar to using a rubber, so as you get that tiny little bit of residue from when you've rubbed it across the page, for example, the orange we're seeing on the screen is nothing more than that, and the little bits of residue have stuck into the glue underneath. As we can see on screen, when you start to remove the glue with a bit of tar and glue remover, it all disappears very quickly. So this looks and has the texture of probably the exterior of the Titanic currently. It's awful, and as we're about to see on screen, if I give it a tap, yep, that's rust falling out the middle of it. Now I would think that any prospective burglar of this vehicle would be more concerned about catching tetanus off it and how long they're going to spend in A&E and potentially losing a limb through infection rather than how long it would take to remove that lock. Ironically, despite the pile of rust on the floor and the fact that this thing looks uglier than a war wound, it's actually structurally quite strong still. So I spoke to the customer. All I'm going to do here is put some black rust-proof paint, which I know is not going to last any much longer than 3 months, but that's what I've been asked to do, and it tidies it up in the meantime. Meanwhile, back in the engine bay, we can see the ECU here. It's a little bit dusty because obviously I haven't got that wet with the jet wash, so I'm just going to give that a wipe over with a damp microfiber because that's safer. And then I'm going to use some Car Pro Pearl, and that's been mixed, I think 3-to-1 with water, and I'm going to use that to dress the engine bay and make that look quite nice. And then some of the little pipes are a little bit harder to get to. I'm just going to use a spray non-silicone aerosol just around there to dress those as well. Another area I wanted to address was these wiper arms. They're not that bad, to be fair. It's just a tiny little bit of corrosion on the end, and the main arms are just a bit weathered and faded. So I'm going to pop the wiper blades off, and then what I'm going to do is just go with a Scotch-Brite on the main arm, because that just needs to be keyed up prior to paint. And then I'm going to use a sand pad, sanding disc, and I'm just going to go over the ends of those to remove the surface corrosion off. I'll then use some spray panel wipe. We use that it's like a solvent degreaser. It basically removes any silicons and oils on there prior to me going over with the satin black paint and recovering them. With that complete, we can now look to tackle the steel wheels. Now, again, we're on a budget, so we have to understand that. These particular wheels, the plastic center caps are held on with the wheel nuts. So unfortunately, you have to jack the car up in the air and remove all 4 nuts to remove the plastic trim. To add insult to injury, this van is missing a couple of the plastic caps on separate wheels. All I'm going to do here is tidy the wheel up by, same as the wiper blades, just scotching up the surface area so I know that the paint I'm going to apply is going to stick to it. Now, controversial, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to actually spray the wheel satin black. You'll see the effect and reason why afterwards. By spraying the wheel black and then putting the silver wheel trim on it, it's almost like a lovely backdrop. It just makes the wheel trim more prominent. If you were to spray it silver and then put the wheel trim on the top, it looks a bit more obvious that it's a wheel trim to start with. No expense was spared with these high quality aftermarket wheel trims. These ones come complete with the car's logo in the middle. And if I give it some gentle persuasion with my fists, we can then apply some tyre dressing and the finished look is nearly complete. A good example is if you're lazy and just stick the wheel trim on as is, it kind of spoils the effect a little bit because we can still see the chipped paint underneath and the rust, etc. So we'll pull that off and we'll duplicate what we've done on the other side to this and the other two remaining wheels. So my next challenge is to restore the paintwork. So what I'm going to do here is tape up some of the rubber areas and plastic trims, because if the machine polisher touches those, it can sometimes mark them and it's more hassle trying to remove that than taping it up to start with. With that done, we're underway. So this vehicle is going to have a single stage machine polish. The aim of the game here is purely to revive the rather flat paintwork and give the van an overall shine once again. And although I won't bore you with hours of machine polishing videos, I'm going to pull this bit of masking tape off, drop the lights down, and we can see a rather crude 50-50. So on the left hand side of the screen, obviously we can see that the paint actually has a reflection, and if I now move the light over here, we can see that as I move the torch from left to right, on the left you can actually see the torch because it has a reflection. On the right, the paintwork is so flat you can't even see it. The cutting compound I used today also had a sealant in it as well, but I'm going to go over with P&S Beadmaker just to top it up and give that van a little bit more extra protection. Once that's complete, I can now put some bumper and plastic trim dressing on, and that's just going to darken those down and give them a nice shiny finish as well. All that's left to do now is to remove some stickers which are quite old out of the windscreen. I'm then going to clean the glass, and it's then time to take the vehicle outside and do a quick before and after and see what we've managed to achieve in one day. So as we can see in these after shots, the paintwork now has a nice reflection, and in defence of this little van, most are really knocked about and have loads of dents and scratches, and it has a few, but overall it's actually cleaned up really well. Likewise, by cleaning the engine bay and sort of tidying up the wiper arms, this now looks really presentable for a van that's done 100,000 miles. And it's just my humble personal opinion that the worst sort of cosmetic thing on this vehicle was this tape stuck all over one of the rear doors and that hideous rear door lock. So this is by no means perfect, but monumental improvement than what was there to start with. So the back of the van, as stated before, wasn't really bad, so I've just scared it a bit with the vacuum cleaner and then proceeded to wipe it around with a damp cloth. I'm only showing it because in previous episodes when I've done a van, people have mentioned that I haven't shown the rear of the vehicle or I haven't bothered to clean it, etc. So just a quick before and after there to show it's been done. So our next video is going to be quite lengthy and quite involved because this thing is an absolute beast of a vehicle. So it's been sat, I think, for around about a year, developed all sorts of interesting cobwebs and stuff like that, green lichen, mould. So we're going to be obviously repainting these alloy wheels. As we scroll down the side of the vehicle, there's going to be a monumental amount of machine polishing because this thing is absolutely scratched to pieces. So if you haven't subscribed, do think about it, and thank you for tuning in once again if you have already. I look forward to seeing you on the next one.